Thank you for coming today. We have 4 speakers, but before we get to them, I have some reminders about upcoming events. So this Saturday, Stanford and Brain Support Network are hosting a symposium on Lewy body dementia caregiving. You can attend either in person or on the Stanford campus, or in person on the Stanford campus or virtually. The in-person registration has to close tomorrow so we can get the lunch orders in on time, but the virtual registration will be open longer until maybe Saturday morning, not sure. We have Kathleen Poston at Stanford, MD. She's going to be giving an overview of Lewy body dementia, symptoms, diagnosis, and treatment, followed by social worker Christine Irving with Family Caregiver Alliance. And Christine is going to discuss communication challenges in the context of dementia with hallucination and delusions. And then after lunch, we're going to have a panel of Lewy body dementia caregivers. I think maybe, Robin, do you have the links available and you could put in the chat what the links are to register?
Yeah,
for,
I'll put them in the chat.
In-person and virtual?
Yeah, I'll put them in the chat.
Thank you. In-person registration is $20 because it includes lunch. Virtual registration is only $10. And if you have a financial need, let Robin know. We have a small fund to make sure people get the information even if they can't afford the conference. And then next Thursday, October 19th, from 3 to 4:30, Stanford is resuming the quarterly DBS, Deep Brain Stimulation Support Group meetings. The new format's going to be virtual, so no reason not to attend if you're interested in DBS. And the speaker on Thursday is going to be Dr. Gail Deutsch. She's a neuropsychologist with Stanford, and she's going to talk about the neuropsychological testing that's done as part of the DBS evaluation project. So sign up for those. I think, Robin, isn't the link is, we'll send out reminders and the link is the same as this webinar, right?
Today. Yep.
Yeah. So if you're interested in that and you lost the link, get in touch with me or Robin. So our first speaker today is Fiduciary Pablo O'Brien. He's a licensed California fiduciary and a national certified guardian. His business name is South Laurel Group in San Carlos. So one thing I hadn't thought about a fiduciary being able to offer is referrals to other professionals. Pablo has on the South Laurel Group website that he has connections with property managers, elder law attorneys, financial managers, and that makes him an even more valuable person to have on your team. So Pablo, take it away.
Thanks, Denise.
Sure.
As Denise mentioned, I'm a fiduciary, and I always have to explain to people what that is. I have to explain to my family over and over again what that is. It's a profession that hasn't been around that long, but the work has been around for a long time. So I always say I break my work into 2 pieces. The first is when I'm working with my clients who need my help in managing their financial and practical affairs, and sometimes their medical care affairs, while they're still alive. And for whatever reason, perhaps they've lost some capacity, perhaps they have some chronic illness, and they don't have someone that can step in and be the primary coordinator of all of these services. Fiduciaries are licensed in California. You can go, later on I have a link you can look at. You can go on to the California government website to look at, to search for fiduciaries in your area and by the sorts of skills that you might want, language and that sort of thing. And you can also check to see if there are any complaints, ethical violations, any sort of sanctions against that fiduciary, which obviously would be a bit of a red flag, but it's if someone is convicted, sort of found guilty of doing something unethical, as they used to say back in grade school, it goes on your permanent record. So that's a good way to check for people. Let me just talk real quickly about what the process is. I am often brought in by either a caregiver, an estate attorney, sometimes a financial advisor, and they're bringing me in when they sense that one of their clients could use some help in doing things like paying bills, managing taxes, sometimes practical matters around the house, arranging for electrical work or handyman or gardeners, and all those sorts of things. And, I get called in and I essentially have a conversation with with the person that I'm working with and the people around them. And I say, what are the things that you need help with? And everybody's a little different. Some people are comfortable taking on certain parts of their daily tasks, but not others. And that can change also, particularly with chronic illness, as people go through the progression of that illness. What they need today may not be what they need in a year, 2 years, 3 years. So I document everything. What is this person like? Do they have a particular way of living in the world that they want to continue doing? Are they religious people? Do they have a family? Who needs to be informed about these things? And then to the extent that they need it, I step in and I say, look, I will do things like manage daily bills, financial affairs, gather tax information for the tax accountant. I'm not a tax accountant, but I do know the information that they need. I will work with their investment advisors if necessary to make sure that they're invested appropriately for their stage of life. And I'll act as their power of attorney in financial matters, and I'll do everything from making sure that the PG&E is being taken care of to and any of the other myriad things that need to be handled, including working with assisted living facilities for payments and any other sorts of things. And the other thing I do is I manage the support team, or to the extent that I'm needed. And I will talk a little bit about that in a minute. The other part of my job is I am a professional trustee. So I administer trusts for people who either don't have someone to do it, or sometimes in family situations, they don't, there's maybe some contention or some friction, and they want a trusted third-party objective person managing the trust for people, both for while they're alive and when they pass away, and the distributions for that. And my goal is I honor my clients' wishes in all their endeavors. So I work a little differently with everybody. I don't have a one-size-fits-all. A good fiduciary will come in and assess the situation and plug the holes that need to be plugged and make sure things keep working. So your support team, you may not even think about it, but it's probably pretty broad. They're all the people that you work with to make sure that your loved one is being taken care of. So anywhere from trust attorneys to property managers, if there's rental property, accountants, and then you go all the way through caregivers and medical providers. Who's taking care of the house? They're out, gardeners, are there housekeepers, IT service providers, who's making sure that the Wi-Fi is still going. Neighbors are really important for some people. Your physical therapists, all of these people. What I do is I kind of come in and I document who are all these people, what's the contact information, who needs to be kept in the loop for certain things. And sometimes I work with a loved one, often I do. Sometimes I'm doing all of it myself, but sometimes a loved one will just say, hey, the burden is just a little too much for me right now. Can you help me and take some of this off my plate? Or it's a contentious family situation and my siblings are upset about the way things are going, or the person who's being taken care of, their siblings. Can you come in and be, again, the objective third party that's taking care of things, and don't put me in the firing line? I'm not going to cover this. I'm not an attorney. I work very closely with attorneys, but these are the documents that allow me to do my job. What's the power of attorney? Usually I work as a financial power of attorney, sometimes as the medical power of attorney if there's nobody available. What am I authorized to do? Can I pay taxes? Can I sell property? Can I rent property? Can I manage investments? Can I pay the bills? Advanced healthcare directives and POLSTs, posts, those help me, of course, when I'm working as a medical power of attorney. in addition to my conversation with people to make sure I really understand their wishes in this case. And then a trust, I'm sure everyone on here knows about it, but a trust just basically says, here are all the assets. They're for the benefit of the beneficiary while the beneficiary is alive. They should be used for that purpose in the way that the trustor wants it managed. When that person passes away, then it should be distributed in the way they want it as well. The last thing I would say is, I always say, what do you do? I do what friends or family would do if they were local, because a lot of people have friends and family who would be happy to do it, but they live in Hong Kong or they live in New York, and they're not physically present. And also, sometimes people don't have the time. They have jobs. They are maybe they don't feel they have the necessary skills. They're not great with money. They're great people, but that's not their skill set. They're not organized, or they just don't. They're not plugged into all of the other roster of professionals that need to be there to help people. So fiduciaries, they're not for everybody, but in some situations where, as I mentioned, maybe the person isn't local, the person doesn't have the skill set, or in some case, some of my clients, there simply isn't a person. They don't have children, they don't have a partner, they came to the Bay Area to work, and now, years later, they're here and they're dealing with some sort of debilitating illness and they need support. And that's what I do, and I step in and do that, and then manage the trust if and when they pass away. And that's essentially what a professional fiduciary does. And I think I've run out of time, so I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Let's see. So I was of the impression, or at least the fiduciary that my sister works with is a financial investor. It's her alternative to like Fidelity. So is there that broad of a range in the word fiduciary?
There is. So fiduciary is a very confusing term, and I don't love that we don't have a better way of phrasing it. You will hear Fidelity say, we are fiduciaries. And what that means is, in a very narrow context for an investment professional, a fiduciary, the only real definition is you have a fiduciary, a financial responsibility of trust to your client. Investment professionals have that when it comes to investments. Tax accountants have that when it comes to taxes. A California licensed professional fiduciary kind of has it across the board for all of these different things. I always say I'm an inch deep and a mile wide, right? I know a little bit about a whole bunch of different things. I know a little bit about accounting. I know a little bit about taxes, a little bit about investment, a little bit about care management. But I typically assemble a roster of professionals who know how to do those things really well. And I am the person making sure everybody gets paid. I'm making sure that there are no gaps in that coverage. And so that's what, when you hear about a professional fiduciary, that's what we typically do. It's a little different than the Look, I know enough about investments to be dangerous. I am not licensed to make investments for my clients. I will find an investment professional and talk about the strategy and the person's place in their, where they are in their life and what's the right risk profile and that sort of thing. They go ahead and do the investments.
Yeah. So the difference is professional fiduciary versus investment advisor who is a fiduciary.
That's correct. Yeah. An investment advisor isn't going to come out and make sure that the landscaper is trimming the hedges appropriately and get paid.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's
me.
And how is your fee structure scheduled so people can have an idea of what to expect if they wanted to hire you?
Sure. So I work in two different ways. When I'm working as a power of attorney for people, a flat hourly rate, and I charge $195 an hour. Okay. I document everything that I do. I produce an invoice on a monthly basis. They can read all the work that I did. And so far, nobody has had complaints about that. The second way I do, which people also haven't had complaints, is when I actually take over the trust and I act as a professional trustee. and I take a percentage of the trust. And that is typically ranges between 1 and 1.5% of the trust while I'm administering it.
Okay. All right. I don't see any questions in the chat or the Q&A. So I guess we will go on to Stephanie Peters.
Great.
Stephanie is, and ask Pablo to stop sharing his screen and ask Stephanie to start sharing his screen while I introduce Stephanie. She is founder and CEO of Enable Care Management based in San Mateo. And it didn't occur to me until I got on Enable's email list that care managers can connect you with whatever type of expert you need, kind of like fiduciaries. In fact, Enable has a registered dietitian, I think, on staff, and they can connect you with trainers, therapists, organizers, whatever you need. Enable even has a caregiver support group on Wednesdays that's open to anybody. And I love the name. It's called Champions of Chaos. So Stephanie, tell us more.
Thank you so much. It's nice to see everyone virtually. I'm Steph Peters. I'm very grateful to be here. And I hope that I can share with you enough about what a care manager is and how we can help so that you can decide if care management is right for you and your situation. So I am the founder of Enable, and the best way I've found to describe what care management is we're basically the expert adult child for hire. What typically falls on the adult children and or the spouse, or both, caring for an aging loved one or through a disease progression. We are trained to either help advise through that or in some cases handle it for them. One important distinction, especially between us and like what a fiduciary, like what Pablo talked about, is we are not decision makers. So in the event that we work with a client who doesn't have a power of attorney in place or someone to pay their bills for them, we would bring in a Pablo to make sure that somebody is calling the shots. Our job is to recommend different options. So essentially a care manager comes in, they assess the situation, where are we now, what's going on in all the different facets of life, kind of like a puzzle. And we listen to the goals. So because we're not decision makers, we really only care about what's best for our clients and their families and helping them reach their goals. That's our sole purpose at Enable. So we come in, we assess, we understand what the goals are, and then we basically create a plan to get there, which includes resources, options, education around all the different options so that you can make the best decision for you and your family. And then we just help you execute it. And we do that on repeat over and over and over for a client as many times as is needed, because as everybody on this call likely knows, if you're going through a disease progression, there is constant change. And so we just do it over and over and over. We pivot where we have to. We bring in other resources as needed. We offer suggestions that have worked in the past. And we basically just guide you through life. And hopefully a win for us is you and your loved one reaching your goals. That really should be the driving force of a care manager. So we have clients, a care manager could have clients who have no support system, and we are literally calling Pablo and saying, can you come in? Can you be power of attorney? Can you manage the finances? And we need to get a doctor and make sure they have the right caregivers, and we can help manage all of that. And then we have some clients who have an extensive support network, and that support network either can't get on the same page or have said, we want to spend our time just having a cup of coffee, not coordinating all the caregivers coming in and out. So they outsource that piece to us, and we're happy to do that. For us, whatever makes you and your loved one happy and however we can contribute to that, that is our role. So I hope that's like setting the stage a little bit. Most people don't understand care management, so don't feel bad if you're still like, I don't know what she's talking about. The reason I put this slide, for you to be able to choose the right care management company or care manager for you, I think it's really important to understand our industry, which is relatively small. We're not necessarily new. We've been around about 30 to 35 years, but there aren't a ton of us across the nation. And we only have one association. It's called the Aging Life Care Association. And the reason that matters is there is no federal or state legislation or licensing for our industry at this time. I think it's coming, but it's not here yet. And that matters for you because literally anyone could decide, I want to be a care manager, I'm going to open a business, and I'm going to provide care management. And some who do that are fantastic, and some are not. I personally always advocate for people to go through the Aging Life Care Association because at the very least, those people who are listed as members have met certain requirements. If you get an advanced professional, and I'll show you on the next slide how to find that, then that person is actually certified to do care management work, and they've paid fees to be part of it, and they've opened themselves up for their peers in the Aging Life Care Association to address whether or not they're adhering to a strict code of ethics and standards of practice. So personally, the safest way I can guide people to find a good care manager is to say, go through the Aging Life Care Association. So I call it ALCA. ALCA says that we are to be credentialed, experienced professionals skilled in providing personalized decision-making and support. Again, to be clear, our job is to say, okay, you are facing this difficulty within whatever, your home isn't safe. You keep falling. My loved one keeps falling. Okay, we've got the obstacle that we're trying to combat. What's the goal? The goal is for us to stay home as long as possible. Fantastic. Let me do some research and come to you with all of the different options, walk you through what it looks like. You make a decision and say, Steph, we want this one. I go make that happen for you, or we do it together. In a nutshell, that's care management. And I think it's really important to make sure that you get someone who is credentialed to do this work. So how to find a care manager. As I mentioned, aginglifecare.org is our one association. You just go to the website, click on the orange button that says find an aging life care expert. You can filter by zip code, county, city, whatever you need. We are all across the nation, but there aren't a ton of us. And there are some areas where care managers don't exist, but there are a bunch of us that are trying to offer virtual consultations so that we can still at least give you guidance over the phone. We just can't quite be boots on the ground for you in those areas. And look for the advanced professional. The advanced professional is going to have the CMC, those initials behind their name. That means they took the test to be certified as a care manager. They passed, and they are in good standing with ALCA. Some questions to ask: how exactly do we work? Most care management companies work like attorneys, where we have an hourly rate, kind of similar to how Pablo explained. You just pay for the work that we do. I know some of my colleagues across the country have a retainer. You like an attorney, you pay up front, they work it off. Some have introduced like a flat fee model. It's a certain amount per month and you get a certain amount of hours. It's all different because we aren't highly regulated. So when you call to vet a care management agency, you definitely want to ask questions around their billing practice. Care management is a concierge service. So you do want to make sure you understand, do you charge for drive time? Do you come to me, or is this fully virtual? Do you have a weekly or monthly minimum? Is there a maximum? Do you charge for mileage? You just want to understand what that really looks like. You want to make sure that you're asking if someone in their agency, or if they're a solo practitioner, if that person has experience with your particular disease. Obviously for this call, it would be Parkinson's disease, and understanding the treatments, the specialties with physicians, what all of that looks like, because you're paying for the expertise. You're paying for someone to know, because you don't know what you don't know. So you're paying for a care manager to know for you and to help guide you through and to help you ideally avoid crisis or pitfalls. Definitely ask the care management practice if there are family support resources and other opportunities that they offer in terms of support for your aging loved one or for yourself. And most importantly, you want to look for the personality and style fit. So care managers really become part of the team, part of the family in a lot of cases. We're really that trusted advocate. So it's really important that if someone is highly detailed in their communication and that's going to drive you crazy, that you kind of suss that out up front. That's also where it can be really helpful to find an agency with multiple care managers rather than a solo practitioner, because in the event it isn't working, or sometimes individuals with memory impairment, a change of face is really helpful. There are multiple members of the team who can collaborate together to just move the needle. So these are just considerations to think about when looking for a care manager. So what services do care managers provide? According to ALCA, we are supposed to be experts in these different areas: legal, crisis intervention, health and disability, financial, housing, family, local resources, and advocacy. Essentially, we are to come in, again, assess the situation, know enough to identify what is needed to complete the picture and get you towards your goals. And if we can't provide it in-house, our job is to get someone for you, vet them for you, and bring them to you as an option. But again, we don't make decisions. We just would say, for example, in my professional opinion, it might be a great idea to see if we can get an order for home health in here, have some PT to work on mobility, and then maybe an exercise therapist continues when that stops. That's just one option. Our job would be to present that to you, just as an example. This is not a plug for Enable. This is to highlight that because we aren't highly regulated, every agency honestly is so different. And we all have our different specialties, our areas of focus. So at Enable, we have the team approach. As Denise mentioned, I have a nurse who can manage medications. I have a registered dietitian who can come in and meal plan and look at menus and grocery shopping. I have a home safety specialist who can come in and look at the home and maybe have some equipment interventions that might help keep the person safely at home for longer. But that's how we do it. And every agency is different. And so it's really important to make sure you're asking those questions. What are your specialties? Is there anything different than you offer than Enable, so that I can make the decision that's right for me and my family? And this is a super long list that elaborates on the 8 areas ALCA says we are to be experts for the most part. These are all of the things that we can help you with. And again, when we can't do it, our whole job is to reach out to our partners, a caregiving partner, an assisted living specialist like David's about to talk to us, Pablo coming in. Our job is to all collaborate together and make sure everything is moving the way it should. So I wanted to leave you with this visual. I hope that it expresses what the main goal of a care manager should be and how they can help a family coping with an individual with Parkinson's disease. It can be incredibly overwhelming, just helping someone through the aging process, let alone through a disease progression. And I think it's really important to know that you don't have to do it alone. And a care manager should lighten your load. They should bring you peace of mind. A care manager should be your eyes and ears when you can't do it, should supplement your eyes and ears when you just want to be sure you're seeing everything correctly or seeing what you should be seeing, or taking that load off of your plate. That thing, when I talk to families, there's always a thing that the main responsible party I'm talking to is like, I just can't deal with long-term care insurance companies. That's always a big one. I just can't handle the medical system and this specialist. I can't get a hold of them. I can't get an appointment. Give that to us. Give that to a care manager to do for you, so that maybe you can just enjoy a cup of coffee with your loved one and like chat with them. Give us the other things to coordinate for you. That is the primary way that a care manager can help you, as well as advocating for the loved one so that their voice doesn't get lost, and helping hopefully to avoid crisis and pitfalls, because we've been through it with thousands of clients. So hopefully we've learned something that can just be super helpful when you don't know what you don't know. And that's it. Any questions?
Yes, if you have a question for Stephanie, type it in the chat or use the Q&A feature, and we will answer it. So my question for everybody is about the fee schedule. I'm sure that you already told me Enable is hourly, right?
We offer both. So we have an hourly fee structure, and we also have a flat fee model that would be all inclusive, which we found is really helpful for individuals who need to budget or who just need kind of some guidance, but not necessarily us going to visit every single week. That just came out of need. So we created that.
Right. And I think the hourly fee was $175.
We're at $250. So, yeah,
that was right. It went up recently.
Yeah, the range in the Bay Area that I've heard, honestly, anywhere from $150 to $325. The Bay Area is the Bay Area.
Yeah. Depends on your zip code, right?
Yes.
And I imagine that the flat fee, kind of like hourly, is based on how much the family thinks service they're going to need. So it's a flat fee, and you get this many hours.
Sort of. We try to tie it more to to outcomes, right? So if you come to us and you're like, these are the things we need, we have everything else, we might be able to identify that we can meet those outcomes for you in a flat fee. And we try not to tie it to hours, because what I don't want is, can you go visit my mom? Oh, sorry, I only have a half an hour left this month. Can I do it next month? We don't really work that way. It's more, if that moves the outcome needle, then we can do that.
Yeah. And how about family meetings? It's nearly impossible to really run a good family meeting. Can Enable do that? And can you kind of talk about why it might be helpful to have a family meeting?
Yes. So we are trained mediators out of need.
Yes.
Families are awesome. And families can be difficult. All families, my own family, I'm just sometimes banging my head against a wall. So it can be incredibly helpful to have an outside objective party, just hearing everybody, creating structure for a meeting. We actually have ground rules that we will put in place at the start of the meeting. And our job is to kind of referee and make sure everyone is adhering to the rules so that everyone can be heard. And ideally, a group consensus can be reached. And that's like 90% of our job is navigating the family dynamic.
And just, out of curiosity, I haven't had a family meeting myself, but is it likely for some groups of people, some families, that having the mediator present kind of brings the level of emotions down and keeps people's behavior a little bit in check?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. You can imagine, I think of it, not that I'm in any way equating adults to children, but my kids, I have little kids, and you better believe when we have guests over, they're so much more polite than when it's just the four of us sitting at the dinner table. It's just human behavior,
Yeah. So maybe a really good idea to get a mediator and have a family meeting.
For sure. And that's the beauty of mediation. We're not lawyers. It's not a legal entity. You're not signing legal documents. We are just trained in making sure that everyone feels heard. And one thing that I have learned in my tenure as a mediator is there is always a why behind whatever is happening. Always. And it's just a matter of someone taking the time to figure out what is that why that is causing this behavior or this conflict or this miscommunication. And most of the time, if that why can be heard and satisfied, the whole thing just drops away and we can move forward.
Yeah. And if a family member's asking why, you get a whole lot of
exactly.
Get a stranger to ask that question. Right. Yeah. Robin has put a question in the chat. She said, would you always want to be hired by the healthcare proxy? I'm not sure what that means.
I think I understand. Robin, do you want to elaborate, or I think I understand the question.
I'm just asking about the healthcare power of attorney. Would that always be your point person within the family?
Great question.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, excellent question. So at the end of the day, whoever is listed on the legal documents has the final say, unless they have put in writing to us, yes, I'm the legal power of attorney, but my sister can make all healthcare decisions. Put it in writing to us. As long as both sisters are okay with it, then we can do that. But yes, at the end of the day, most of the time we don't have to get that granular of who is the final decision maker. We need to know, and we always collect that upon intake and assessment and onboarding with us. But most of the time, it doesn't have to go that far. But yes, we have to know who that person is regardless, even if the person still has capacity to speak for themselves. Upon intake with us, if there isn't power of attorney, even if the person still can make their own decisions, one of the requirements for us is that within the first 90 days, they get that completed. And that's where we might call a Pablo and say, you know, we haven't identified anyone else. Would you be willing to talk to this person and become that for them? Because we are not decision makers, we have to have someone. And in the event this person can't speak for themselves anymore, who is that person?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people might feel like if they hired a care manager, then they are, you know, obligated to stay with that service, and it would get to be too expensive. So
Sure.
do you have long-term clients and also really short-term clients both? And
Yep.
is that okay with you?
Yes, I mean, we love every client that we've had, even the ones that have been, you know, have needed a lot of our attention. We still love them. So of course we want to stay involved as long as is appropriate. We are set up to be involved long-term, but we have also out of need heard from our clients, you know, I really only need you to help me with this. So we have project-based packages where we're only involved in a short amount of time. You aren't signing up for, I mean, we're month to month. You only pay for what you use us. The only stipulation we have on that is we have some clients that use us in the beginning, then we do our job and things calm way down and they stop service with us. And then they'll call when a crisis happens and say, okay, can you run to the hospital? No, I can't. I don't know what's happened in the last 6 months. How could I possibly advocate for you and your mom? So that's the only thing. If you want to use us as that like crisis intervention, we do need to be kept up to speed. But certainly we have people who use us specifically just for like one project, for example, and we do that for them. And then we tell them, call us if you need us again.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good thing to know about not being able to jump back into a crisis because you don't know what's going on. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to know, you know, just a little. So that's where we
Yeah.
have a lower tiered service that you can stay as a client of ours and keep us in the loop. So we call it the peace of mind service. So that when a crisis happens, you have peace of mind that you can call us and we can mobilize quickly. And then you can just kind of bump back up to the other tiered service.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things caregivers sometimes think, oh, I'll get in-home care when I need it. And the in-home care can't actually start today because they don't know you or the situation, what's going on. So Laura's going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But if we don't have any more questions, I don't see any more in the chat. I'll ask Stephanie to stop sharing her screen and ask David Cohen if he will start sharing his screen and tell you a little bit about David while he does that. So David Cohen is owner of Exceptional Senior Placement in Danville with his wife, Rachel. ESP keeps track of all types of care facilities around the Bay to help you determine the best placement option for your situation. In fact, my family used Exceptional Senior Placement to find a board and care for my mother-in-law when she had a stroke in 2019. But then I learned just while I was putting all this together from the ESP website that they can do a lot more hand-holding than we needed. So I hope David will tell us more about that. David, you're on.
Great. Thank you so much, Robin and Denise. Thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to be here with Pablo and Stephanie and Laura. Excited to talk about placement. Kind of like Stephanie's world, we're not all created equal. There's a lot of different options out there. And so it's always a privilege to get to share what we do, how we do it. And I'll give you kind of a broad overview of placement. Then we'll get into a little bit details more about us and how we support our families. So senior placement helps families navigate finding senior living communities. That could be independent living, assisted living, memory care, boarding care communities. At a high level, we're going to understand what your loved one needs and requires and budget, and then we're going to introduce to the appropriate places. There are companies out there that do this from an online digital marketing standpoint, where you'll call and maybe speak to somebody in a different state. They'll take your information and then they'll send you a list of places, but they also send your name out to those places, and those places will then call you. And now you are connected with sales and marketing people who are trying to get you to come in. That can be a very overwhelming experience because you're getting bombarded by calls, and you're also working with somebody who hasn't been on the ground locally, so they may not offer the appropriate resources or team of support, or know on the ground, what these places are actually like. There's another option where there's people local here that will do kind of a variation of that. They're going to know places better, but they're also not going to be holding your hand through this experience. They're going to take information and send you a list of places for you to go out on your own and learn about those places, and they're there to talk to you afterwards and so forth. They're going to have better knowledge, better resources locally, but it's still not as hands-on as other placement companies that are out there. It also should be noted that a placement is a free service. It works like real estate, where for introducing our clients to the appropriate places, we get a referral fee when that person moves in. So having success is important because you need to have a successful move for you to get compensated in this. So what is exceptional senior placement? How do we do things and the others like us? Well, we're more than just placement. We're really coaches. A lot of times we're first contacts for families that are in need. So we love care managers, we love fiduciaries, we love home care agencies, because a lot of times we're helping those families build a team around what they need. So we spend time with our families first learning about what is the situation, and is there any triage that need to be done to kind of make it a safer situation, get us the time to do what we need to do. Then what is the level of education that the family has about senior living, assisted living, how they work, what are their capabilities, what can they support, how to think about an assisted living versus memory care versus boarding care. So we spend a lot of time building some foundational support and education, and that's our favorite part, because once people get a better understanding of the lay of the land, then we can really get to work. And we like to encourage that to be with all family members. Sometimes we're on a Zoom with 6 different family members who are all part of this process. Sometimes it's just one adult child, but we want everybody to be on the same playing field, because that's where we can really then start to help. And then we're digging into the client, the resident that's going to be moving. What are their care needs? What are their illnesses that are going to project where things are going? Who they are as a person? Are there goals for social aspects or spiritual that they're trying to achieve? Hobbies, interests? What are the amenities that they would actually use and participate in? And then we're talking about geographic area, where is ideal for the family, and suburban versus urban, or views, etc. We really want to understand the geography that's going to work, timeline that we're working with. If we have to contend with any wait list, we'll discuss and how we can navigate that. And then budget, which is a huge component here. The cost of senior care, if you don't need a lot of help, is X. And then if you start needing a lot of help and support, it can escalate quickly, and plus with annual increases. So we really have to talk with our families about the budget and how to frame and think about this for their loved one, their own personal situation. So we give them the tools on how to think about and land on what is a budget range that we're comfortable with, because we don't want to show places that are inappropriate and going to put stress on the system, because that'll only cause more challenges later. So we're educating, we're building a plan to move forward, we're doing the research and of identification of all the appropriate communities. We're introducing our families to those communities, and then we're going on the tours with them. And that's an important factor, because on these tours, we learn a lot. We may hear something that wasn't addressed when we first talked, and that'll be a key piece of information that we may want to introduce another community that we thought about that might be further out, but it could answer or solve something that we're trying to solve. Plus, we ask a lot of questions on the family's behalf that they don't even think about asking. And so the tour part is key. And then we huddle up afterwards and we get all the feedback. We make sure there's nothing else that we've missed. And we give the families the space and time and the tools to make the best decision for themselves and their loved ones. We discuss the logistics, the paperwork that's needed, and coach all the way through, and very hands-on with that, getting them the right resources for downsizing, for moving, etc. And then we're just a partner on this journey. You know, a lot of people can move into an assisted living when they're much more independent, and they could have a great lifestyle there, but at some point that could change. And many of our clients are coming back to us many years later saying that the situation has changed. What should we consider? What would be appropriate? And then we're helping them with round two of the life's journey of aging and so forth. So our team. So this was important. My wife and I took over this business in 2016, and it was a one-woman show who operated in Alameda and Contra Costa County only. And when we started working, we started realizing that the Bay Area is very diverse. There's different communities that have different amenities and different offerings and different price points throughout the Bay Area. And we also have different family members who live across the Bay, and one might want mom close to them or another area over here. And so we built our team to cover the entire Bay Area. And like Stephanie, we're a true team approach. We get together and we consult on all our clients a couple times a week. We're out there giving presentations and attending presentations and using that knowledge to build in our database so that we can support those clients. And so we've got a team member who covers the peninsula, San Jose to Daly City. We have another one who covers San Francisco to Santa Rosa. And then we have 4 of us that are out here in Alameda and Contra Costa County. And we do this every day. We get calls from people at communities. We get feedback from other care managers. We get feedback from our clients. So we have a good pulse on what's happening. And we use that to benefit our families and their knowledge. Our goal is getting people the right information at the right time so they can make the best decisions for themselves and their family. We feel that people are thrown into this world of having to make quick decisions, health issues. They have no understanding of senior living, or maybe their context of it is from 30 years ago. And so by getting people good information and thinking about the pros and cons and really pulling back the screen of what's happening behind the scenes, we can help them understand and be prepared for these decisions. So I mentioned we cover independent living, assisted living, memory care, boarding cares. I'm happy to go into more in depth as to what each of those are. It's a whole different conversation, but you can ring me for that one. And then we also discuss respite stays, which are short-term stays. They can be 30-day stays at a community. It's like moving into a hotel. You just bring your bags and your toothbrush. Sometimes places will do it for a week or 2 weeks, but they're typically mostly 30-day stays. Some fun facts about us. We've got a database with over 1,521 different communities in the Bay Area that we've been to or cataloged or talked with the owners of. We've had over 1,200 families move in the last 7 years, and they've chosen 329 different communities in the Bay Area. So that means we have access to 329 that we know we've moved people to. And we've got 428 different resources in our referral database, everything from, care managers all the way to Medi-Cal planning and VA benefits and logistics planning and moving and recycling and you name it. And you can see by our reviews, it gives people a good idea of the level of support and commitment we have to our families. So I encourage people to read about that. And then you can reach out, how to reach out to us. We love to do 30-minute consults, even if you're not needing any placement help, but you have questions regarding the landscape for senior living. We are always happy to help talk with people. You can sign up for our newsletter that gives a lot of local news and resources and it allows us to stay in touch, which we do quarterly. You can email us at our general number or reach out to me directly at david@eSeniorPlacement, or you can call the main number, which anyone on our team will pick up. So thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to any questions.
Marvelous. I have some questions. Um, so respite. I did not know that you guys have a respite list. Do you have, just off the top of your head, some places on the peninsula, which is, where we do our support groups, or is primarily from Daly City down to Los Altos?
Yeah, so respites are interesting. Most communities do them as long as they have availability. So if they are only have 1 or 2 rooms left, they might not be doing respites because they want long-term residents in there, right? A short-term resident is a lot of work up front. It's still the same amount of paperwork, assessments that needs to be done. So when they have that extra capacity and the appropriate furniture, they set these rooms up available for respite. So we have a client right now who would like a respite stay in Palo Alto. And we are making the appropriate calls right now to find out who has one available to fit the right timing, to fit their needs. And then we'll be able to go look at those with the family member ahead of time. So respites evolve and change. They're not a set inventory that's out there.
Right. And do all types of facilities, all the 4 types that you mentioned, they all offer respite, skilled nursing, board and cares, everybody?
Yeah, so again, skilled nursing is out of our realm. That's governed by the Department of Health. So it's more
Gotcha.
typically an insurance-based, what insurance you are, Kaiser versus non, and where you can have access to. So for our world of memory care and boarding care, assisted livings, it's much more complicated for memory care to do a respite stay. It can be very disruptive for somebody to come in for a short-term stay. Get reoriented. So there are some that will do it, but there's more that don't feel that that's worth it, because by the time someone adjusts, then they're moving back out again. And boarding cares are really looking for more long-term stays. They struggle with the short terms. There are some that will do it again. But they have to understand the situation, the needs. So, all of what we do is very specific and tailored. The information is really important that both sides have it, so that what we're matching and introducing and learning about, everybody's on board and is appropriate.
Gotcha. And you mentioned that the skilled nursing is governed by state of California. It's more medical need. Can you just juxtapose that a little bit against assisted living?
Yeah. So assisted living, in broad terms, is non-medical support. Really, as our bodies and our minds decline, we can provide and have caregivers provide activities of daily living support, meals, house cleaning, laundry. So they're doing under the governance of the Department of Social Services. So it's really looked at non-medical. So when you get into the hospitals and skilled nursing, that's governed by the Department of Health, and they're working more on the medical and health side of things. And so we operate in this narrow window, and sometimes there's a little bit of crossover, and there's a lot of details and specifics. So if you have certain conditions, if you're insulin dependent, et cetera, it really matters where you go because of their level of support. Some communities can have nurses on site, and that allows them to do certain things that other communities that don't have that don't. So you really have to kind of match up the care level and the needs for it's appropriate. But that's, most people, their insurance is covering their hospital visit, then their skilled nursing and rehabilitation, and then they're transferred either back home or to a community where they can continue those therapies through home health. And then we go from there to see what other support they need.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was a little surprised that you said that you're adding 4 to 8 new communities every month. And I noticed that places like Sunrise are building, but is that what it is, or is it in other levels as well?
Yeah, the majority of the 1,521 we have, about 300 of those are large assisted livings. When I say large, we're talking about 40-bed plus. The majority are small care homes, 6-bed homes, right? They populate the majority of this list, and there are, you could have 30 in a city. We have some in the East Bay. There's 50 or 60 in a city of these small care homes. And they're really taking people at a more advanced care level, people who are not benefiting from the amenities of an assisted living. They have mobility issues, more advanced dementia. They need more hands-on, more proactive support. And those make up the bulk of the options that are out there. You know, each city may have a handful of assisted livings, but the boarding cares drive those numbers up.
And I know that boarding cares can keep people through hospice all the way to end of life. But they have a limit. There's a difference between what boarding cares can offer versus a skilled nursing facility. Is that true?
Yeah, so assisted living, memory care, and boarding care are all following the exact same regulations. There are certain things that they can and can't do. In theory, they can all take people through end of life, onto hospice and end of life, but it depends on how you choose to go down that path. If you have certain measures that are considered like life-sustaining measures, IV, feeding tubes, ventilators, trachs, those are things that have to be monitored and governed under the Department of Health. So you'd have to be in a skilled nursing environment. So most people choose to age and transition on without those things. So they go from the assisted livings or sometimes assisted living to boarding care, and they transition on to hospice and then on from there.
Gotcha. Okay, any more questions, folks? I don't see anything in the chat or the Q&A. So, okay, thank you, David.
Thank you so much.
If you'll stop sharing your screen, I'll tell you about Laura Sigura a little bit and ask Laura to start sharing her screen. Laura is a care manager for Seniors at Home, which is a division of Jewish Family and Children Services on the peninsula. And one of the services that Seniors at Home provides is in-home care, which is what we've asked Laura to talk about today. I hope that she'll share with us some tips about how to interview an agency and explain what healthcare aides can and cannot do in your home, and maybe even talk a little bit about the advantages of hiring a caregiver through an agency versus hiring an individual. Hi, Laura.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure.
Sure.
And it's really
Thanks
nice
for coming.
to meet all of your other wonderful panelists. So yes, my name is Laura Sigura. I work for Jewish Family and Children's Services, and in particular, a division of the agency called Seniors at Home. But overall, the agency takes care of people from birth until end of life. And I've been a care manager there for a number of years now. So I'm here today to talk about home care. And yes, Denise, I will be talking about all of those things combined. And also, how do you know when you or a loved one may need this extra help? And if you've decided that help is needed, how do you go about getting it? But first, I want to differentiate between home care and home health care because they're not the same. And for some people, this can be very confusing. Home health care is doctor prescribed, medically oriented, and typically covered by your health insurance. Home health care is ordered upon discharge from either a hospital or a rehabilitation setting. And these providers go into your home to provide a number of different services, mainly though physical or occupational therapy, sometimes both, speech therapy, nursing, and an occasional caregiver who might go out once a week to help with bathing. These services are time limited, and you don't pay for these services because most insurances do cover it when they are properly prescribed. Home care, on the other hand, is non-medical. It's private pay, but if you have a long-term care policy, you may be able to use it for this purpose. Home care caregivers focus on a myriad of tasks, which I will touch upon, and they may be a great option for you or your loved one. So let's get started talking a bit about when home care might be needed. One scenario might be that your loved one was fully capable and fully independently functioning at home and ended up with a hospitalization. And then going home, it's possible that home health care is not needed or prescribed, but that person could use a little extra boost in help around the house, maybe taking you grocery shopping until you feel strong enough to go yourself, maybe, helping with laundry or some task like that. The goal would be to get that person back up to full functioning as they were prior to the hospitalization. Another scenario might be that your loved one with Parkinson's disease, for example, is showing a slow decline in functioning. Let's take mobility, for example. If you've noticed your loved one walking unsteadily inside the house, maybe grabbing onto furniture and walls for support as they navigate the hallways. Maybe they've had some falls or they're having trouble getting up or down the stairs. Perhaps there are unexplained dents in a car, a recent traffic ticket or two, maybe an accident. And this might be a signal that driving is not safe anymore for your loved one. If you notice that a once tidy house has become a little more cluttered and unkept, maybe personal hygiene, grooming has altered, it might be time to get a little concerned. It's possible that help is needed in the kitchen. You notice that your loved one has lost interest in cooking that they once enjoyed, or weight loss can be noticed through baggier clothing. The fridge might be empty or has some moldy food in it. So these kinds of changes are typically gradual. And if you visit your loved one frequently, you may not notice a lot of these things. But with some knowledge about what to look for, you can stay on top of these potential issues and intervene accordingly. Is your loved one showing signs of loneliness? Are they less active outside the home if they're not driving anymore? Are they isolated? So we know that loneliness and isolation can lead to depression and other serious health issues. If you and your family choose to bring home help into the home, let's get into a little more detail with that. A caregiver at home can fulfill non-medical tasks and activities. Services can range from a few hours a week to 24/7, and this can be adjusted always as needed. Home care allows your loved one to remain living where they are most comfortable, in their own home, where there may be strong attachments, wonderful memories, and just, being connected to their past in their own homes. Non-medical tasks include personal care, such as bathing and dressing, toileting, medication reminders, housekeeping like laundry, linen changes, dusting and vacuuming, buying groceries, meal planning and cooking, assistance and encouragement with eating, transportation, getting to and from medical appointments and running errands, maybe taking someone out on social outings, ambulation, walking in and outside the home for physical exercise and maintaining strength, supervision with climbing stairs, getting in and out of bed, chairs, on and off the toilet, socialization, help participate in activities or attending outings. What about just companionship, conversation, playing games, reading aloud, listening to music, anything of particular interest to your loved one? Your caregiver gets paid on an hourly basis. It's more affordable if you only need a few hours a week, and costs do go up when you need a lot more care than that. And ultimately, it can be more costly than having your loved one live in assisted living, for example. Our costs now at the agency, my agency, Seniors at Home, which are competitive with other agencies, are with a range. Typically, most people need more than 4 hours, but we don't go below 4 hours for any given shift. If you do want only 4 hours, the levels range from level 1 to level 3, from 46.50 to 50.50 an hour. And when I talk about levels, this is evaluated when we send one of our assessment specialists out to see you in your home, and that's free of charge with our agency. And we do a full evaluation, and so we can say, okay, these are the kinds of things that you're needing help with. We ask the questions, we get the answers, and we put them in the appropriate level. If you want more than 4 hours in any given shift, again, levels 1 to 3, it starts at $41.50 an hour and goes up to $45.50 an hour. And rates over time have definitely been increasing because, you know, as we raise the minimum wage in our areas for caregivers and other people, then our rates have to go up too, unfortunately. I say that. Home care definitely works well for those people whose most important consideration is to remain as independent as possible and continuing to make as many decisions for themselves as possible. At home, a person has full autonomy over his or her own schedules and routines. Most seniors who are considering help at home may feel that they are losing control over their own lives, and so they may be resistant to this kind of intervention or change, or any change for that matter. But I like to promote the idea that hiring help when you need it beats suffering the consequences, because those can be tremendous. Having said that, not everyone can financially support home care forever. Sometimes it's a temporary measure, and then other options need to be considered. For the very low income who qualify for Medi-Cal, there is a program called In-Home Support Services. This program provides care in the home for those who need it and qualify for it. So where do you go to hire help? Well, you have some choices, and a home care agency is certainly one of those choices, such as Seniors at Home. You may also hire independently of an agency, and word of mouth is one way to locate a good caregiver. I've left out another option, at least I'm not going to be talking much about that because I've not had much professional experience with this, although it does exist, and that's going through a referral agency of some kind. And in a nutshell, you pay an agency to find a caregiver for you, and then you become the employer. One such entity would be care.com. The main advantage of a home care agency is that the agency will handle all the background checking and screening processes for all of its caregivers. When you choose an independent caregiver, though, you and your family may need to handle all of these essential steps in order to ensure that a caregiver is properly trained and licensed by the state. And if a caregiver, an independent caregiver, is not properly insured, for instance, you and your family could end up being liable for any accidents that occur inside your home. Another potential downside to hiring an independent caregiver is that compared to an agency, the family has to handle all of the scheduling. So this could make it difficult to find a replacement on short notice if a caregiver gets sick or needs to take some time off. Agencies usually employ many caregivers, and that way they would be able to come up with a substitute for you at any given time. There are a number of important questions to ask a home care agency when you are interviewing them. Always ask a provider if they're licensed, bonded, and insured. You should also be able to get a list of references of clients that they've served so that you can better identify an agency that might work well for you. And if this is not something that they're willing to give up or give out, then that should be a red flag. So is the home care provider licensed? Many states require a home care provider to be licensed in order to provide services. Our agency, Seniors at Home, has a specific license which allows us to provide a particular level of care. Under our license, we employ what the state calls personal care assistants, but we just refer to them as caregivers. These caregivers need to spend about 80% of their time with personal care, such as the bathing and dressing, and 20% with what we call, and the state calls, light housekeeping, such as the vacuuming and dusting and linen changing and laundry. They do not scrub bathrooms. They do not scrub or deep clean kitchens and refrigerators, which sometimes clients do ask for. But if a caregiver is making food in the kitchen, they can clean up what they have messed up. Our license allows for skilled nursing and medication management, but a doctor's order is needed to provide these services. So skilled nursing would be periodic wellness checks, like taking vitals, and medication management, like setting up a pill organizer or dispenser, getting medication orders from the doctor, helping to arrange for delivery or pickup of those medications. When a potential home care client comes to our agency and wants to know whether they can get a caregiver from us, we, as I said before, would send out an assessment specialist who performs an evaluation to determine the type of care that's needed and whether or not we can provide that care. These evaluations are free of charge. Our caregivers are given basic instruction, and care plans are developed with the client so that everyone knows exactly what the caregiver is supposed to be doing. But other agencies might also employ and offer more skilled training for their caregivers, such as in dementia care or assisting with challenging transfers, because that can be, somewhat tricky, and you want caregivers who are really well equipped to handle those kinds of situations. So it's a good idea to ask each agency that you would interview exactly what are their services, what kind of level of care do they offer? Are they bonded? It's not apparently required by law. We are bonded. Home care bonds offer financial protection to seniors and their families in case of malicious treatment or damages caused by a provider. What about insurance? Home care providers often have business liability and workers' comp insurance. An agency needs to be properly insured so that you and your family are not liable if a caregiver is injured on your property. It's also important that a provider has business liability insurance to help cover the cost of any injury or property damage. There are other more specific questions you can ask the agency. How long have you been in business? Do your caregivers have any specialized training? How do you recruit them? What services are offered? How often are care plans reevaluated? Do you require a minimum number of hours a week? Do you accept long-term care insurance? We do, by the way. If the regularly scheduled caregiver isn't available, do you have replacement caregivers? How are families allowed to pay for in-home care? So in today's home care world, especially post-pandemic, there are often shortages of caregivers. This appears to be across the board in the various regions in the Bay, and I'm sure elsewhere. So at times it can be difficult to find a caregiver for a particular client. And if we run into that situation, we help to refer the client out to other agencies, and sometimes are able to make those calls first to see whether there is availability. So I will wrap up a little bit by talking about how to talk to your loved one about accepting care. And this might be something you want to do even before you go through the motions of trying to find a home care agency, but to try to identify ways in which you can bring your loved one on board with this change. So for me, I think normalizing aging and the need for extra help and care is important. Because even if someone doesn't have a chronic or acute disease process, the natural course of aging does lend itself to more frailty. And of course, you're just going to be concerned about your loved one's safety in the home. Listen closely to their concerns and try to understand the underlying emotions. Oftentimes it's fear, and it's fear about those changes. It's fear about, what does this mean for me? Is this the end? It's fear about bringing someone, a stranger, into the home, and how do you allay their fears and concerns? Focus on the positive and the benefits of having care in the home, prevention rather than the consequences. And I think it's also sometimes good to turn the tables around and to explain how getting help will help you. If you are a primary caregiver for someone else, it will help you feel less worried and stressed so that you can take care of what you need to do in your own life. You could sleep at night knowing that your loved one has the care that he or she needs. And I think most people can relate to that. And by, letting them know that you want to be there for them as much as you can be and will always be, you also want to be at your best when you are caretaking for your loved one. And that means taking care of yourself and enabling them to hire some extra help. You can also do a trial run. You can say to your loved one, you know what, let's make a bargain here. I'd like to bring in Susie Smith for 1 month, and let's see how it goes, okay? Hiring a professional care manager may take the onus off of you and help everyone adjust to the changes which are coming. Care managers, as Stephanie said before, can help facilitate with difficult family discussions. That's what we're here for. So I know that's a lot, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Get my speaker working here. You mentioned that it's really difficult now post-COVID, especially to keep enough caregivers on staff. And I wondered if you have a lot of turnover. I was thinking maybe it was one reason that the rates have been climbing sort of noticeably in the last 5 years or so, was that people are changing jobs, maybe even hopping from place to place as the hourly rates go up. I'm not sure.
You mean for the caregivers themselves, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? By history, our caregivers, and we employ a lot of them, but they do not have to only be employed by us. Most of them work for several agencies, or at least more than one. Some may not, but they're free to do so. And that by itself might make getting the caregiver for, let's say you need 20 hours a week, but you have an available caregiver who can only work 10 hours a week, but that client needs 20. So there are a variety of issues that come into play now with regard to caregivers, and other agencies are finding similar situations. So it's not certainly just ours. I think it's an industry-wide situation right now. Yeah, and as you know, a lot of caregivers live very far away, so they're not, even though minimum wage keeps going up and whatnot, it's certainly not enough to be living within the center of the Bay Area. So many of them come from out of this area to work, and also therefore they may want to work as live-ins, or they may want to have a 12-hour shift or a minimum of an 8-hour shift. And it's not every client that comes to us who needs that or wants that and wants to pay for that. They want fewer hours. So it can be a bit of a problem these days.
Yeah. If this just popped in my mind when you said that somebody works for more than one agency. If you had a caregiver that you really liked, and maybe a loved one with dementia, that having that same face in the house would be a better thing. Can you hire the same person through 2 different agencies? I mean, it's a billing hassle, but
that's I've never been asked that question before, so I really don't know. But I think that in today's world, we have to be creative. So I would imagine that that's possible. I mean, I'm working with a family now where they have a private caregiver in the home Monday through Friday, someone that they found through word of mouth. They adore her. On the weekends, they use an agency. So there is that kind of combination that can happen.
Someone asked, did you say your organization does accept payment from long-term care?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Wonderful. And another person said, where is the initial assessment done and what does it include?
The initial assessment is going into a person's home. It's important to see the home environment where the caregiver would be working. The questions are similar to, I don't know, just it has to do with evaluating the functioning of the individual. And because it's non-medical, we're looking at those activities of daily living, right? How does a person themselves looking for the help may have a clear idea up front about what it is that they need. I have difficulty getting dressed. Well, then the assessment person might say, okay, let's look at that a little more in detail. Is it putting on socks and shoes and that's it? Or is it everything from A to Z, right? Do you need supervision in the shower, or do you actually need someone to hold your arm while you're in there seated? Hopefully, if not, we would get them a chair, for the shower. So it really depends. So it is very in-depth. And then a care plan is drawn up that says, okay, this is what for these areas of functioning, this is what needs to be done, and this is what the caregiver will do. And when I mentioned earlier about the different levels, you could hire someone who is only a companion, and that person would be a level 1 and doesn't have necessarily the skill set to be a level 2 or 3. So we also try to evaluate the caregivers as they become employed by us and see where they may fit in those abilities to provide care.
So the level 1 person would be the less expensive end of those
Correct.
hourly ranges that you gave us. Yeah.
Correct.
You know, one question that often comes up in our support groups is the family will have in-home care, and they will ask the aide to help with meals or help with laundry, or some of the household things beyond just hands-on care for the elderly person, if it's elderly. And the aide will say, no, I don't do that. That's not part of my thing.
Right.
And so is that something that you need to negotiate with the agency when the care plan is drawn up, so that it's very clear when the person comes in the first day that they're expected to help prepare meals, they're expected to do things like that?
Yes. So the care plan is reviewed with the potential caregiver, so that that person knows, and it's written, these are the tasks that have been approved. And remember when I said earlier also, I know I said a lot, but the 80%, 20%, and 80% of a caregiver's time theoretically and practically is supposed to be geared more towards those activities of daily living and the functioning of the individual. The bathing and the dressing and the grooming and the even ambulation and other things that go along in those categories. And, a lot of our clients want, and I understand that they want, how more someone to scrub the toilet for me, please, and other tasks which really are not within the realm of what our caregivers do. And if there are disputes and if there are issues, that's why an agency can be a very good choice, because, there's someone to turn to. It's either, it could be the nurse supervisor of the caregivers in the home, and she's the one who goes out periodically to check up on things, and she'll make random phone calls and say, how's it going? She'll talk to the caregiver, she'll talk to the client. And then if I'm involved separately as a care manager, my clients can also come to me if they have a complaint or a concern. And so we work as a team.
So if somebody has a dispute like that, where they were really, maybe it wasn't specified in the care plan that the person was supposed to help with meals or laundry or whatever, does the care plan need to be rewritten?
Yes.
And then maybe a different staff member needs to be assigned to that household.
If things don't work out, and sometimes, of course, that happens with one particular caregiver, we would help to find another caregiver for that client.
So different skill set, maybe.
Yes, exactly. And the client, over time, again, depending on the situation, the needs may change, and therefore the care plan needs to change. And as you said, maybe that person was independent going into the refrigerator or going into the cupboard and putting things together on the stove. And now they're no longer able to do that. So you need the caregiver to step in to help with those tasks. And so that does need to be rewritten in a care plan.
Right. Would you mind repeating what the hourly rates were for the different levels?
Sure. So I'm mentioning the 4-hour shift, but these days it's almost impossible. We can try, but it's really hard to find a caregiver who will only work 4 hours. Okay, but it's not impossible, but it's hard. So those prices are for the only 4 hours, and we don't go below 4 hours, $46.50 to $50.50. So the $46.50 goes with level 1, and then it gets gradually increased. If the shift is over 4 hours, it starts at $41.50 and goes up to $45.50.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, that's our 4 speakers. I don't see any more questions popping up in the chat. So thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody. And I just want to remind everybody, Saturday is the Lewy Body Dementia Symposium at Stanford campus or virtually. And our next meeting here for the Palo Alto support group is November 8th. And we're going to have 2 speakers on the 8th. I believe we have a hospice representative from hospice and a representative from a home health agency. So we will see you next month. Take care, everybody. Bye.